Hello, I'm Chris Ott, and this is the series I'm doing called The Evolution of Perception and How It Came About and its use in philosophy, its value. And so this is part 8, and I'm going to continue now. In the previous part 7, I talked about how it helps to emancipate us from superstition, because we do wave this two worlds idea, a world of our experience, our everyday, what we call the world we experience. Like, I could name anything I can name is out of my experience. That's my world. That's your world. That's our world. But the way philosophers have tried to explain that experience, is they've posited a second world, which is the causal world, which they can't define, because if you can't picture it or conceive of it, because if whatever you pictured or conceived, that would be in your experience. You would be experiencing your conception of it or your imagined image of it. So that would be part of the experience, not part of the cause of that experience. The cause of that experience is necessarily, by definition, completely mysterious. And I kind of symbolized it by a question mark over and over. And here's our world of experience over here, and here's whatever is causing it. We don't know what that is. And because of that, that opens up a big door for, oh my goodness, I can't find my eraser. Here it is. Okay. So the problem with this is it opens up a Pandora's box of making things up, okay? Picturing things anyway, even though that is part of your experience. And this is where we get most of our superstition. The idea that God is on a cloud and he's creating this somehow. And this is actually these are real ideas that they have in religion, but they also have that in science, because science tries to paint a picture of what's causing our experience, but they're making the same mistake too, because whatever you're calling the cause is actually the effect. So you're reading your effect into your cause. They've written about this over and over for 25 years. So, and if it was easy to explain, I wouldn't have had written, 100 papers and several books to try to explain it, because it's hard to put into words. But I enjoy making the effort anyway, even if people can't usually follow me. But here, we've talked about that. Now I want to talk about how the evolution of perception, being a different way to explain our experience, which I'll quickly go over again, gives us a way to understand what the mystics have been saying for thousands of years and have not been easily understood. That's why they're called mystics, because what they say is very mysterious to us. But I'm going to make it seem a little less mysterious when we understand what the evolution of perception proposes. Okay? The evolution of perception, first of all, it takes our world of experience, and I'm sort of being funny, but I'm not. I'm serious. Here's a house and a chimney like little children draw, and there's clouds and there's a sun, right? Okay? And this is our world of experience. That's where we live. That's what I get up and I move around in the kitchen and everything, my world of experience. But instead of positing something mysterious outside of it, okay, I instead try this a different way, as an emergence. It's an emergence of experience itself. It emerges. Now, I'm going to give, in the beginning of this series, I talked about where this idea came from. I said, didn't even know what I was trying to get at in the beginning, so people thought it was a little nuts. But I felt like the old way of thinking is that the world is sort of coming at the percipient, the one who's perceiving it, like it's coming at him, and he's perceiving it. But I thought, well, there's something different. I called it the new view, and I have filled up notebooks of this idea. Now, it may sound really crazy, but I'm going to show you that it's not. This is where the world is coming out of a point that's sort of behind or within us. Now I'm going to explain what I mean by emergence and why this seemed relevant to this issue of perception. I showed before in part 3 of this series, and I'll show a few again, some examples of things that emerge from a point, like a tree or a flower or many other things, or volcanoes that formed whole continents. They come out of a point. Okay, so you have an origin point, and then everything flows from it. And even okay. Now, let's take a seed from which a tree grows. The seed itself might be really tiny, but out of that grows a giant tree, okay? So, and we all planted flowers, and we know this. This is how we actually scientifically have come to understand that things are really formed and made. They're not made by some invisible something like a talisman or a magical thing somewhere. That doesn't even explain them because you can't see it, you can't see how it caused anything. Okay? Whereas when we study a thing that emerges, we can look at the process by which it emerges, and we can study that process and we learn how it came about. Okay? Similarly, our experience, if we look upon it as an end effect of an emergence of experience, which in my books I symbolize as this I and these perceptual schemas that form the laws of nature, and then out of us supervene upon the laws of nature our bodies, and then through our bodies we perceive the world around us, which is entirely mathematical. It's originally mathematical, and even before that, it's nothing. See, math isn't really a physical thing. It's a conceptual thing. So the world emerges conceptually, and we find ourselves in it, and we, as witnesses of that world that has been formed, and we are part of that world, and we find ourselves in that experience. And this is the evolution of perception idea. Now, is there anything that is theoretical like the invisible cause over here that we were coming up with? No. This symbolizes not a magical eye somewhere. This symbolizes perception itself, a verb, a thing, a happening. We know that perception is happening. It's not a theory that I'm perceiving this room I'm in. That's self-evident. Its evidence is its own occurrence. Okay? It's the only self-evident thing there is experience. Everything else is derived. But it is self-evident. It's its own evidence for being. Okay? So this is not a theory. Okay? This is an actually known thing that experience is going on verbally. Now, that there are perceptual schemas, if you read my books and you understand what I mean by perceptual schema, those are modes of perceiving. For instance, the things like time and space. Now, we know that we see things spatially. We know that we see things in terms of time. So these aren't theories that we see this way. So these are also not theories, okay? This is all examinable, the process. We can think sort of backward toward the original whatever was there, and we can see that it had to be some kind of primordial perception occurring. But it may not have been awake in the beginning because there was nothing to perceive. Now, these are very strange words, and I don't expect a lot of people to understand them, but all my books and most of my papers are free online, and I have lots of books, and my first book is totally free. You can find it on my website. So, no one has really ever found what's wrong with this idea. Matter of fact, my thesis advisor, said, I've never heard this idea ever, and you should develop it. Another professor said, I can't see how you can dispute this idea. But I don't know, you're going to have to explore it. And also, you're going to have to live a lonely life because it's not going to be something that academia is going to be able to embrace right now, because it's kind of giving up too much of what it's already been doing for 100 years, which is sort of reductive materialism, which is another view which I show the problems with. Okay? But anyway, when we understand that things emerge and that the perceptual world emerges, we begin to understand some mystical things. Okay? So let's say this is that perception that originates, and these are these lenses, and they form the laws, which form us, which form our bodies, which have eyes and their nervous systems and brains and everything. And we find ourselves in this world with all the other things in this world, which all were part of another layer of evolution, which was biological evolution, which was going on. Now, when we look at this and we see that we are really this perceiver, okay? We're not really separate. Here's you, and here's me, and we are really this one perceiver. Why is it divided? It's these lenses that eventually cause this sense of division. And that's in all my books, and I have diagrams showing how this works. So you and I are one. Now there's a line by Meher Baba from whom I got this basic idea. This is what inspired this idea. I didn't actually find this in his writing, but I found it implied. He said, you and I are not we but one. Or he also said, I am what you are. Now, these sound really mysterious. You see, Meher Baba's a mystic, and those are mystical things. And I've literally heard people say, that doesn't make any sense. You and I are one. How can that be? He just said you and I. He doesn't understand. We appear separate, but we are really one. That's what he means. But let me give some lines by Jesus. Okay? I'm going to read them and put them on the screen and show that for the first time, these are mysterious if we're looking at it through a kind of like a materialist lens. But if we look at things through an emergent lens, and this oneness, this non-duality, I said at the beginning, this is a form of non-dualism, where we don't divide things. Okay, we have everything is really one thing, but it's a kind of verbal, it's kind of adverbial, you can say. But listen to what Jesus said. This is from John 14:20. I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. Okay? So you are in me, and I am in you, because we're one. Okay? Let me read another. This is Luke 17:21. For indeed, the kingdom of God is within you. How? This is what it means, within you. In a sense, it's more like behind you, or is you. It's the real you, and it's within you. That's the sense of God in you. Another quote. This is Ephesians 4:6. One God and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in you all. Okay. You see what I'm saying? This real seeing is our own seeing. It's within us. As I said, if you want, use these metaphors and analogies, it's kind of behind us, looking through us. Now, here's a line which I found interesting because it suggests emergence again from Jesus. This is from Matthew 13:31. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. Now, there are interpretations of what Jesus meant by that, but he literally says the kingdom is like a seed. And before I just read, the kingdom is within you. That's Luke 17. So here, the kingdom is something that emerges from a mustard seed. And in Meher Baba's writing, he calls this an actual point, and he calls it the bindu point. And the bindu means pupil of an eye. Okay? So really, I didn't steal this idea because his book about that pupil of the eye came out, well, I first saw it 1 year after I wrote my first book. So I had already kind of guessed it from his other books. But I find this in Advaita Vedanta. I find it in emanationism, which is a 2nd century Roman philosophy. And it's I find this in the non-dualism of Ibn Arabi, the Sufi, in the what century was he? I think the 12th century in Spain, and he had this thing called emanationism. No, that's not emanationism. It was called well, it's a form of non-dualism, and he called the thing that's in everything the absolute. Okay. It's called Wahud ul Wujud. That's what he called it. It's Sufi, this Arabic, and it means oneness of existence. Okay, and there is a unity of existence. Yeah, that's what Wahud ul Wujud means. Okay, I'm not going to say anything more today because that was a lot of words. I just want to say, no, I will add one more thing, but I have to go get up and get something from across the room. Maybe I'll cut this out, but I've got to. So I have one more mystical quote I want to read before I am finished, because I was able to keep this pretty short relatively to some of my other videos. This is a piece my friend Stelios and we did before this book by Meher Baba came out called, we wrote this afterward. This is a version of Meher Baba's notes that were discovered right after he died, which came to be called the Intelligence Notebooks. And we edited these from the original scans of the original manuscript because we didn't like what they had done. I wanted to make it as pure as possible. But let me read the opening paragraph. This was written by Meher Baba in 1925 or 26. Now, a reason I'm reading this, okay, here we go, and there's a chart that's drawn there. The reason, by the way, this chart's interesting because it shows the kind of the emergence happening in a different way from this infinite intelligence, and then it forms, and then the infinite intelligence is in all these individuals, okay? Just like I drew before. Now, I want to read this. Now, this is going to seem really impenetrably hard to follow, and that's why I'm reading it. Because my point of this part 8 is to show that these deeply difficult, mysterious, mystical phrases and books can be understood through the framing of the psychic emergence that evolution of perception describes. And you just have to make, the only difference is you have to call that original starting point God, and then it becomes the basis of a religion, the mystical basis of it. But this is what I believe these mystics are really saying. And somebody can disagree with me, but so far people haven't even paid enough attention to me to disagree. But that's okay. It gives me more time to say my piece. So this is how it opens. It's the opening paragraph at the very top. It's kind of long. And I'll read it slowly, and I'll put it on the screen at the same time. This is called The Intelligence Notebooks, and the protagonist in this narrative in this book is infinite intelligence, which is the original state. Okay? The infinite intelligence, through the individual infinite mind, that's infinite false thinking, infinite false I, through the subtle body, realizes or thinks the infinite subtle imagination. And through the infinite mind's gross body realizes or takes experience of the infinite gross imagination or gross universe. The innumerable individual infinite false minds, that's us, are all in the one universal infinite false mind. Remember what Jesus said, I am in you and you are in me. In the infinite false I, false egoism, and this infinite false thinking mind is in the infinite intelligence. So the infinite intelligence is in every individual infinite false mind. Okay, so it's in me. I'm in it and it's in me. Isn't that what Jesus said? Through every individual infinite false mind and its subtle and gross bodies, it is the same one infinite intelligence realizing its subtle and gross imagination. Okay? Now, I'm not going to tell people to rush out and try to read this book. I'm telling you, I read that because it's hard. And but you can understand it. And you can understand it easier because of this model of EOP, which was derived from the author's other writings before I found this. This is actually written at the beginning of his career writing, but I read it last, which is kind of interesting because it was only discovered after he passed away in 1969 in a box in his home in India. And sat around for decades before they got around to finally releasing it. And I was lucky enough to be able to download off the internet from the Trust website, the Avatar Mir Baba Trust, as a website based in India, and I was able to download the let me turn that phone off so I can do I forget what the word is. You do a video conclusion. So anyway, that's all I had to say today, and I do have more to say. We'll see if I get around to doing it. But this does conclude my emphasis of the uses or the value of EOP. This one being, it helps us to understand what the mystics have always been saying. Thank you very much. Appreciate your watching. And I never tell people to like or subscribe because I kind of don't care. I don't monetize anything, and I kind of see these things as kind of a time capsule for the future. So I'm not really trying to get a following or anything, but I wanted these to exist so I can get this stuff off my chest, say it somewhere, write it somewhere, and leave it for the future. When I think that people will be more sympathetic to ideas like these. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.